Well, a liberal wish list, big government waste, job-killing tax hikes, and Washington in the middle of your life from cradle to grave. That's how Republican Senator Tim Scott described President Biden's plans for America. And what's the price tag of those plans? A toxic $6 trillion, that's right, $1 trillion. White House correspondent Eric Phillips brings us this recap of the president's first speech to Congress.
President Biden spoke for 1 hour, 4 minutes, spending the vast majority of his time talking about infrastructure, both physical and social. First, though, he touted his pandemic success stories.
Now, after just 100 days, I can report to the nation, America is on the move again.
Right out of the gate, the president launched into a 100-day laundry list of successes, but not before recognizing the visual history of the two people behind him.
Madam Speaker, Madam Vice President, no president has ever said those words from this podium. No president has ever said those words, and it's about time.
From there, Biden pressed his pandemic playlist, capping it off with a plea.
Go get vaccinated, America. Go and get the vaccination.
Then came his infrastructure plans, beginning with the $2 trillion American Jobs Plan that he says addresses infrastructure, jobs, and environment all in one fell swoop.
There is simply no reason why the blades for wind turbines can't be built in Pittsburgh instead of Beijing. No reason. There's no reason why American workers can't lead the world in the production of electric vehicles and batteries.
Next, the president laid out his second infrastructure layer, the $1.8 trillion plan for American families. It would provide universal preschool, 2 years of free community college, and extended family leave.
How do we pay for my jobs and family plan? I will not impose any tax increase on people making less than $400,000. But it's time for corporate America and the wealthiest 1% of Americans to just begin to pay their fair share.
A financial commitment targeted by Republican Senator Tim Scott and part of his official response.
It's a liberal wish list of big government waste, plus the biggest job-killing tax hikes in a generation. Tonight, we also heard about a so-called family plan, even more taxing, even more spending, to put Washington even more in the middle of your life, from the cradle to college.
The president says he's spent plenty of time with President Xi Jinping, and he knows of his desire for world dominance.
I made absolutely clear that we will defend America's interest across the board.
Another international topic, Biden doubled down on his decision to remove American troops from Afghanistan by September.
After 20 years of valor, and sacrifice, it's time to bring those troops home.
Biden also urged Congress to pass the Voting Rights Act, legislation that would protect the rights of Dreamers, and the George Floyd Policing Act.
Let's get it done next month, by the first anniversary of George Floyd's death.
In his response, Scott said the president is heading in the wrong direction.
A president who promised to bring us together should not be pushing agendas that tear us apart.
Noticeably missing from the president's speech was any elaboration on the crisis at the southern border. It was clearly an address designed to pitch his American Families Plan. And next, he'll hit the road to try and sell that plan to the American people, with stops in both Georgia and Pennsylvania. Eric Phillips, CBN News.
Thanks, Eric. Chief political analyst David Brody joins us now for more on the president's speech. David, the president wants to spend $6 trillion. Are Republicans going to let him get away with it?
Well, and Pat, that $6 trillion is just proposed in the first 100 days. How much more does he have in the hip pocket? In terms of Republicans letting him get away with it, on paper, no. The problem is, what are Democrats going to do when it comes to budget reconciliation? I mean, if we take all of this $6 trillion, right, that first $2 trillion is already done. It's in the bank. It's being spent as we speak, and that was done on budget reconciliation. That was the COVID stimulus bill, and now we've got this $2 trillion more on the infrastructure, and I put that in air quotes because infrastructure apparently means anything nowadays. $2 trillion on infrastructure, and then the American Families Plan that he's talking about. So, I mean, this is just bizarre that he's even doing this because this is a lot more than I think people, the center left, Joe Biden, had promised during the campaign trail. But I will say this. He had a key line last night that people should pay attention to. He said, "We the people are the government." Wait, what? We the people are the government? I think that says everything you need to know about what his mentality is, what this administration's mentality is, which is indeed the government is here to help. Well, Ronald Reagan, we remember what Ronald Reagan said. Those are the worst, or those are the most dangerous lines you can ever hear, the most dangerous words you can ever hear. We're the federal government and we're here to help. That's not good at all. And also one other point, Pat, he said the word freedom in the speech one time. He said the word invest 15 times. You can read into that what you can read into that.
He also touted that so-called H.R. 1, which we know is a stalking horse for a takeover of our electoral system by the federal government to take it away from state legislatures. It's a horrible bill, yet that was the first one that Nancy Pelosi put on the table. But he said, well, let's pass it like it's so important. What do you think about that?
Well, a couple things. H.R. 1, the only way H.R. 1 is going to pass, it's already passed the House. The only way it's going to pass the Senate is if they change the legislative filibuster, which means taking that threshold, as you know, down from 60 to 50 votes. Right now, Joe Manchin is the key to, in essence, saving America from it. I mean, if Joe Manchin says okay, then Democrats are going to rush H.R. 1 through and D.C. statehood and the Equality Act, and I can go on and on. And so this is how important it is. You know, it's interesting. Joe Biden talked about unity so much as a candidate for president, and now he's invoking Jim Crow. And I shouldn't even say invoking Jim Crow. He's actually saying that Republicans are trying to invoke Jim Crow type laws in America. How does that help unify the country? And that's why H.R. 1 has come around, because Democrats believe that they have to federalize elections, in essence, to stop Republicans from going back to Jim Crow. Pat, that wasn't a State of the Union technically last night. It was a joint session of Congress speech. But the state of our union is deeply divided. And he had talked about America is on the move, but conservatives would say America is on the move, all right, but America is on the move to the abyss. That's what they think today.
Well, you know, the thing that Tim Scott pointed out is he had a bill having to do with police, and it was stopped by a filibuster by the Democrats. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And Tim Scott's speech was really amazing last night. He was able to weave his faith story. I've talked to Tim Scott many times about his faith story. You know, he was saved as a youngster. He was failing all of his classes. He got mentored by a manager at Chick-fil-A. It's a great story. But yeah, he was able to weave that. Plus, he was actually saying that he was called Uncle Tom and the N-word by progressives. And that's what he said last night. And then we can go on about Tim Scott. Look, I think he had so many different and great lines last night, but he was able to take that idea of unity that Joe Biden talked about and said, there's been no unity at all. As a matter of fact, I thought what was interesting, one of his best lines when he talked about Democrats on the infrastructure bill, he says they can't even build bridges to build bridges. And, Tim Scott, an up-and-coming star. He's been an up-and-coming star for a long time. But I agree with your assessment at the top of the show. A Ron DeSantis, Tim Scott ticket could be extremely appetizing for Republicans in 2024 if President Trump decides not to